It is time for our Cash Tag segment. We're going to focus in on Slack ahead of their earnings release later on this afternoon. For that, we'd like to welcome in Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com. Good morning to you, Andy. What are you guys seeing? Obviously, we've talked about this with both you and Landon all week, these stay-at-home names. It's been the stay-at-home earnings week.
Stay-at-home earnings week, and these companies are popping. We talked yesterday or the day before, I can't really remember, things kind of run together, but we talked about work from home becoming a permanent solution for a lot of people, and that continues to pop. It's popping at the beginning of May, it popped in the middle of March when the lockdown started, and now we're starting to see that this is becoming a permanent move. And so when we look at a company like Slack, we look at it a little bit differently than we did Teams or Zoom, because Slack actually uses a usage-based billing model that we really want to know less about how many companies or people are signing up for Slack, but more about how many users are using it on a monthly basis. And so when we look at Slack, we look at mentions rather than purchase intent volume. And for this, it's really clear that Slack has benefited in a big way and done a very good job of holding on to those new users. You can kind of see the big spike there in April that started in mid-March in terms of people talking about Slack and using Slack. But what really interests us here is the way that the plateau, the return to normal, is a return to a much higher normal than the baseline. And that tells us that, yes, Slack is getting new users on the platform, and we saw that they're keeping users happy with other charts that we provided earlier in the week. And so those users are sticking around. And so the companies that support those users are paying larger and larger fees on a per user billing system that other companies don't have, and that really puts Slack in the driver's seat in terms of they must keep their customers happy, they must keep their users happy, or else they're not going to make as much money. So we like the model, and we think that the company will come out with some really good numbers and should have nice forward-looking guidance into the future.
Andy, this is one of the key areas that everyone is talking about, and it's kind of the hot topic right now, so it's fun to cover. But what I'm going to ask you is, there's a lot of competition in this sector now, and a couple of the big boys have entered those firms with deep pockets and a lot of resources. So if you could look at Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Slack and Facebook and groups, who's winning there, and who's the projected winner, and who can viewers bet on, or at least get a look in to see who's going to win this thing? Because there's a lot of competition now. Zoom and Slack, they've got their business, and these other firms like Microsoft, they're multi-level, and they can put a lot of cash into this thing. Who's winning, basically, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, and I would also throw Google into there. They've got, the Hangouts and Meetups and all of that stuff going at Google that people are using. Look, I think the ones that are winning as of right now, I think what you have on the screen right now is a pretty good list in terms of Zoom, DocuSign, and Slack are doing a very good job at staying in a specific lane and offering a specific set of features or functions to their users. Microsoft's trying to come in, Google may be trying to come in and kind of wipe the deck with all of the functionality. But what we see is that users really tend to appreciate the companies that do a very, very good job within their own niche. For Zoom, that's video communication. For Slack, that's chat or file sharing communication, things like that. And so we think of it as a little bit bifurcated. We think it's tough for the larger companies. While they may have an advantage coming in and saying, all right, company XYZ, we have a relationship for all of our Office suite of products. Now we want you to use Teams. They have a huge advantage there. But in terms of satisfying or delighting the user, it's very clear to us that Zoom and Slack are doing a better job than the conglomerates are. And that is reflected in the consumer happiness, it's reflected in the stock price, and I think it will be reflected in Slack's earnings report that they put out over the next 24 hours.
Andy, two-part question for you because I love your insight on this stuff. Is the play for companies like Zoom and Slack ultimately to be bought, or is it to ultimately expand into something else? Because we know these single service companies tend to, sometimes come out of the gate hot and then fade. I mean, things like GoPro come to mind, things like Snap come to mind, and this inability to expand into other revenue streams can really put a damper on the future, especially if you don't have a pandemic really forcing adoption of technology that has really benefited these companies. Second part of the question is the playbook for Slack right now for their new users just a hope that there's some type of trend adoption, that people are getting used to using their service to communicate intra-office from home, and that's going to continue even as people start going back to the workplace, and that it doesn't really matter if they're working from home or not?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think that this has accelerated an existing trend. We talk about that all the time on this show. What COVID and the lockdowns and the pandemic, all of these things have accelerated existing trends. People are realizing that they can work from home, whether they choose to in the future or whether the company allows them to in the future. Either way, they've adopted these technologies, they've become users of these technologies, and the company has a method to continue reaching out to them and getting them to use the product. It's a better way to work, whether you're in the office or working from home. And I think that that shines through really well in LikeFolio consumer happiness data. On the other question, whether the end game for these companies is to be acquired or not, I think that what you're seeing is Microsoft, Google, companies like that trying to roll their own because they have the distribution that they need in order to try to compete. I think that an acquisition starts to make sense among smaller players other than Microsoft and Google, or if Microsoft and Google have trouble getting their product to stick in the market, it could be a good play. But for now, I think these companies are still young. There's still a lot of adoption and stickiness that will occur, and they still have a lot to prove. So it's a double-edged sword. I think there's a lot of opportunity for both of these companies, Zoom and Slack, but I also think that there's still a lot for them to prove that they're more than a niche feature, that they can become a business and a suite of products that users can count on across enterprises. So we'll see, but so far so good. I think that the start for both of these companies as public companies has been phenomenal.
Definitely. Slack a little bit different, though, in terms of stock price performance. Obviously, a direct listing, not an IPO. Direct listing, it opened, I believe, around 38 and a half, it looks like. So basically right where we're at now. It's essentially fought its way back to where it started trading here, Andy. From everything you've tracked right now, if this stock was priced at that last June and is kind of just back there now, given everything that's happened, do you guys like this company going forward?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we liked it a lot more under $30 a share. I think at this price is kind of tough. But I do think that this company has a lot of legs, and I like the model that they have. I like the way that they force themselves essentially to delight the customer or the user in order to keep people paying. So I think that the incentive of the company is aligned with what the customer wants, and that's pretty rare. I don't think that they have the viral trajectory of a Zoom where everybody and their brother could just share a link really quickly and now Zoom has a new user. Slack is a little bit more cumbersome to get involved with than that. But overall, yes, we like the company. I like it a lot on dips, when the market sells off and Slack gets kind of thrown out with the bathwater. But I do think that this is a company on the rise and that can do some really big things, and it will be an acquisition target, I think, over the next couple of years.
Excited to see how these years shape up and how this earnings release goes with Slack announcing here. So, Andy Swan, thanks for joining us. As always, Andy is the co-founder of LikeFolio.com.